Hi, my name is Joe, and I'm one of the pastors at Redeemer Lincoln Square. Now let me read for you today's passage, which comes from Deuteronomy chapter 9, verses 6 to 8. Know therefore that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stubborn people. Remember and do not forget how you provoked the Lord your God to wrath in the wilderness. From the day you came out of the land of Egypt until you came to this place, you have been rebellious against the Lord. Even at Horeb, you provoked the Lord to wrath, and the Lord was so angry with you that he was ready to destroy you. Amen. Now here in these short little verses, we see a phrase that is repeated twice, and it's a phrase that really caught my attention. And it's a phrase that says, you provoked the Lord your God to wrath. That you provoked the Lord your God to wrath. And this phrase is really fascinating to me because of what it tells us. And it tells us that God, who according to the Bible oversees and runs the entire universe, who has the glories of not just the mountains and the oceans, but entire galaxies at his disposal, we see that this God is provoked, has his emotions swayed by tiny, puny little human beings. But not only that, not only do we see that this God is a God who is provoked to anger by his people, he puts up with them. He doesn't do away with them. And we see this in the second half of verse 7, when it says, from the day you came out of the land of Egypt until you came to this place, you have been rebelling against the Lord. It's saying this entire time, right from the beginning of God's act of delivering them out of Egypt, leading up to this very moment, it's saying there's not a bright spot to speak of. Not a bright spot to speak of. But instead of flicking them away, like he had every right to, what does he do? He puts up with them. And what we see throughout the book of Deuteronomy is we see that this God, through his servant Moses, pleading with his people continuously, right, to choose to obey towards a life of flourishing instead of disobeying towards a life of destruction. And so the picture of God that we get here is one who has wrapped himself up, who's bound his emotional state with his people, and one who is utterly committed to their flourishing and will see to it that they are led to a life of flourishing through the ups and downs. Now, do you see the condescension that it takes for you to wrap yourself up in someone who is as inferior to you as human beings are to this God? And yet, this is the God that we see all throughout the Bible. And the clearest picture, the clearest depiction of this character of God that we see in the Bible is in the person of Jesus. Because in Jesus, we see a God who squeezes all of who he is, his infinite being, into a finite time and space and becomes a human being. See, if you read through the Gospels, we see Jesus constantly arguing with people, chiding them, pleading with them, grieving over them. And we see that Jesus, is ultimately consumed by their hatred of him. And you know, when I see all of this, I see that there is no other God in any other belief system like this God. God who is so in love with his people that he decides to enter into the world and decides to interact and engage with them on their level. But not only that, I see a God who couldn't bear the thought of his people being consumed by the fire of his just and judicial and righteous wrath for bringing injustice into his world, that he decides to go to the cross and be consumed by it himself. And see, friends, when we see all of this, and we go back to our verse, our phrase, we see that it is out of love that this God is provoked to anger. And we also see that it is love that led him to the cross. And so, friends, here's my encouragement for you today. Will you get to know this God? Because as you do, you will find that this God will be provoked to anger because of you, yes. He will be grieved over you. And you'll find that this God will discipline you. But you also find that this is the same God who will bless you. This is the same God who will rejoice over you, who will sing over you, who will wrap his arms around you and lead you towards a life of flourishing. And in all of this, through life's ups and downs, you can trust that he will always, always love you. So will you get to know this God? Will you learn what it means to be wrapped up in him? To have your entire life revolve around him? To learn what it means to be angered by the things that anger him? To be grieved by the things that grieve him? To rejoice over the things that bring him joy? To learn what it means to lead a life that brings pleasure to him? And all of this because he's wrapped himself up in you, because he loves you and is committed to you. And so let us learn what it means to get to know this God and to please this God together. Amen.